Still at 5, a former comic book store owner will spend at least 16 years behind bars for sex crimes against a child. The state says Robert Burns met the victim at the comic book store in Wilmington when she was just 10 years old. That was 23 years ago. Prosecutors say Burns spent the next 4 years grooming her and began sexually assaulting her when she was 14 years old. The victim came forward in 2020 to disclose the abuse. Burns was convicted of 4 counts of statutory sex offense and 4 counts of indecent liberties with a child.